The first thing she noticed wasn't the heat. It was the smell of sharp gasoline fumes mixed with the dark, animal scent of burning rubber and leather. Thick black smoke curled from the floorboards like a living thing searching for air. The world of the 16-year-old girl shrank to the battered interior of her old sedan, her wrists tied to the steering wheel with rough rope that bit deeper with every desperate pull. Through the smoke-blurred windshield, she could see them, silhouettes, laughing, pointing. Their varsity jackets were bright splashes of blue and yellow against the dimming evening. They thought they'd trapped a helpless new girl. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Cedar Ridge was supposed to be a fresh beginning, a place where she could disappear. Anonymity wasn't a preference for her, it was a necessity. Just months ago, her life had been a blur of airports, private training gyms, and the blinding lights of competitive rings. At 15, she wasn't just a championess, she was a phenomenon. In the world of underground mixed martial arts, she was known as the Sparrow, a deceptively gentle name for someone capable of extraordinary, surgical violence. She had been the youngest fighter ever to win the elusive Athog Cup, a title spoken of only in hushed tones. But that life had ended with a single phone call, a rainy highway, a crashed car, parents gone. The silence that followed drowned out even the loudest memories of cheering crowds. Her trophies were sold, the championship belt stored away in a dusty trunk. Her coach Akale, a grizzled man who had raised her through discipline and affection, handled everything. A new identity, a new school, a quiet existence with her grandmother in a town no one cared about. Let the fire inside you cool, Kale had told her, voice low and tight. You're powerful in ways most people will never understand. Don't waste that on schoolyard nonsense. Hide it. Promise me. She did. Cedar Ridge High was its own kind of battlefield. Its royalty wore varsity jackets, and its hierarchy was ruled by football. Jake, the quarterback, and Chloe, his sharp-eyed girlfriend, walked the halls like crowned tyrants. To them, Elara, quiet, dressed in second-hand clothes, avoiding attention, was perfect prey. They didn't see the coiled strength in her posture or the constant way her eyes tracked exits. All they saw was someone they assumed was weak. It started small, a shove here, spilled lunch there, whispers that trailed behind her. She swallowed it all, letting each insult sink into the already heavy weight in her chest. Kale's voice echoed in her mind again and again. Patience, Sparrow. The strongest warrior knows when not to fight. She breathed through the taunts, knuckles tight against cold bathroom sinks while laughter echoed from the cafeteria outside. Predators don't see patience as discipline, they see it as fear. The day everything ignited began in chemistry class. Jake accidentally knocked over a beaker, bright liquid splashing across her clothes. The room erupted in snickers. Chloe leaned in, voice dripping with poison. All you, poor charity case. Maybe stick to cleaning instead of experimenting. For a split second, Elara's mask slipped. Her eyes sharpened, and not in fear, but in calculation. A single move, one precise strike, could end this entire charade. Chloe felt that shift and stepped back before she could stop herself. But the moment passed. Elara wiped her jeans, said nothing, and walked out. That silent look became the spark. After school, Elara headed to her car at the far end of the load, her usual spot, chosen for the solitude. She sensed them before she heard them. She didn't need to turn to know Jake, Chloe, Mark, and Tyler were closing in. Her pace quickened, keys cold and useless in her hand. She almost made it. Her fingers brushed the car handle when Jake called out, fake sugarcoating his voice. Hey, new girl, we need to talk about chem class. I didn't do anything, she replied quietly. That's the problem, Chloe said, stepping closer. You looked at me like you're better than us. It was a script as old as high school itself, but one they believed in like religion. They backed her against the car. The insults escalated. Someone mentioned her parents' information they'd clearly dug up with a cruelty that hit like a punch straight to her ribs. She could have ended it all right there. A single strike to Jake's nose would break it. A swift kick could drop Tyler. But Kale's warning held her still, so she did the only thing she was allowed to do. She tried to escape. She ducked under an arm, slipped into the driver's seat, and reached for the ignition. That moment of panic became her mistake. They yanked her back, their laughter rising like a pack closing in on a kill. From a gym bag came a coil of thick rope. This wasn't spontaneous. They tied her to the steering wheel, knots pulled tight until she winced. "It's just a joke," Jake sneered. "A little Cedar Ridge welcome." Chloe found a small container of emergency gasoline in her trunk. Her smile twisted. "Let's make it memorable." Before anyone could react, she splashed the fuel across the hood and wheels. The smell was overwhelming. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was something far darker. "Noah, stop, please." Era's voice cracked as fear finally bled through. The bullies hesitated, the weight of what they were doing beginning to creep in. But Jake, desperate to maintain control, flicked open a silver lighter. One click, a flame. He looked at Era's terrified face and tossed it. The explosion was instant. A roar of heat slammed into the car. Flames crawled upward, hungry and alive. Panic shattered their bravado. The four of them ran, their footsteps fading into the distance. Inside the car, smoke filled her lungs and stung her eyes. The heat intensified, growing unbearable. She pulled at the ropes until her skin tore, but the knots held fast. This was how her life was supposed to end. After everything she'd survived, her parents' faces blurred through the smoke. Kale's voice whispered through her fading consciousness, "You are more than they see. You are a storm contained." Something inside her cracked open, not into fear, into focus. Her breathing steadied. She rotated her wrists, seeking tension, seeking weakness. She found the tiniest bit of slack. It was enough. Blood slicked the rope, making it easier to maneuver. With a brutal twist of her shoulder, one hand tore free. Adrenaline surged. She freed the second hand quickly, but the car was an oven. The windows glowed red. The doors were dead. The wiring melted. Her only escape was through the cracked driver's window, and now a wall of fire. She wrapped her hoodie around her arm, centered her weight, and struck the weak edge of the glass with all the power she'd ever trained for. The window shattered outward in a glittering explosion. A blast of heat met her as she dove through, rolling hard across gravel to extinguish the burning embers clinging to her clothes. She lay still, gulping fresh air, pain screaming through every nerve. She had survived. The bullies hadn't gone far. They were huddled behind trees, watching the car burn. Pale with shock, they saw the flames engulf the vehicle completely. They saw what they thought was her final moment. Then they saw her, a silhouette emerging through smoke and fire, clothes singed, face streaked with ash and blood, eyes locked on them with the cold precision of a predator. Jake's voice broke. "How?" a question mark. Era didn't run. She walked toward them with slow, deliberate steps. Mark and Tyler charged her. They didn't last 10 seconds. A precise strike dropped Mark instantly. A sharp sweep and nerve hit sent Tyler gasping to the dirt. Jake lunged next. She used his own momentum to flip him, slamming him into the ground. He stayed down, wheezing helplessly. Chloe tried to beg. Era leaned close, voice low and smoky. "You tried to burn me alive. You're lucky I made a promise." She didn't touch her. She didn't need to. Sirens wailed in the distance. Era stepped into the shadows and disappeared just as firefighters arrived. The aftermath shattered Cedar Ridge. The bullies confessed contradictory, terrified bits of truth. How Era escaped remained a whispered legend. Mark and Tyler stayed silent. Jake was injured and would never regain his old confidence. Chloe withdrew entirely and left town. Era never returned to school. Gail came for her. Standing in her grandmother's living room, he looked at her bandaged skin and haunted eyes. He didn't scold, only sighed, heavy with sorrow. "They saw a glimpse of who you really are," he said quietly. "Not everything, but enough." Weeks later, the police received an unmarked envelope with messages, photos, and a recording, enough evidence to ensure the bullies faced serious consequences. Era and Kale left Cedar Ridge at dawn. She watched the town fade behind them. She was no longer just a grieving girl, nor only a legendary fighter. She was both someone forged by fire, carrying pain and power in equal measure. She had tried to live quietly. Now she was ready to step into whatever the world had waiting for her, unafraid. And somewhere deep inside, the Sparrow unfurled her wing. Era didn't leave her room the next morning. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat on the floor against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing as her heartbeat replayed yesterday's humiliation on loop. She had been strong her whole life, too strong, strong in ways that break a person from the inside while the outside stays unbothered. But something about the moment her knees hit the cold hallway floor, the laughter, the cameras, The boy's hand in her hair tore open a part of her she thought she'd buried years ago. Kale knocked softly. Elara broken bar, you didn't eat dinner. Let me in. Her throat tightened. She didn't want anyone to see her like Thiza, especially not him. He had always been her quiet anchor, the one person who could see through her armor, but that was exactly why she couldn't open the door. If he saw her broken, she was afraid she might crumble completely. I'm fine, she said. You're not, he answered, voice low, steady. And you don't have to pretend with me. Those words a broken bar, they hurt more than anything that happened yesterday. She opened the door. Kale didn't rush toward her or gasp at how hollow she looked. He just stepped inside and sat down beside her, his shoulder touching hers, warm and grounded, almost like he'd been waiting for her to let him be here. For a long moment, both of them stared at the wall in silence. Then Kale spoke quietly. You scared me. Elara blinked. Why? Because when you walked through the house yesterday, you didn't look angry. He paused. You looked empty. A broken bar, and I've never seen you empty. Her breath broke in her chest. She covered her face with her hands, not to hide tears because she didn't cry but because she didn't know how to respond to someone who actually saw her. Kale reached out and gently pulled her hands away. You don't have to be strong today, he whispered. Not for me, not for anyone. His voice cracked on the last word, and something inside her shattered. Not in pain, in relief. I'm so tired, she whispered. I'm tired of acting like nothing touches me. Tired of pretending I'm okay. Tired of holding everything alone. Kale's jaw tightened, and he pulled her gently into him until her forehead rested against his chest. She stiffened out of habit. Elara didn't accept comfort easily, but slowly, she let herself breathe in the warmth she'd been denying since the world started hurting her. You're not alone, he said. Not anymore. Elara's voice was a whisper. Yesterday reminded me of things I never wanted to remember. The past? He asked. She nodded. My mother broken bar before she died. A broken bar. She used to say the world was full of people who hurt others just because they can, and I always said I'd never let anyone touch me again. But yesterday Her voice trembled. Kale tightened his arms around her. Yesterday wasn't your failure, Elara, he said softly. You walked into a place full of people who never bothered to know who you were. You didn't lose. They just didn't deserve you. She swallowed hard and finally allowed a single tear to fall. It landed on Kale's shirt, a tiny dark mark on white fabric. Hey, he whispered, touching her cheek. You're allowed to hurt, you're allowed to feel, and you're allowed to heal at your own pace. Elara exhaled shakily, a breath she'd been holding for years. For the first time since the hallway incident, she didn't feel ashamed. She didn't feel weak. She didn't feel ruined. She felt a broken bar understood. Kale leaned his forehead against hers. When you're ready, he said, we'll figure out what comes next. Not with anger, not with revenge, with healing, with strength that isn't forced. Elara closed her eyes, and for the first time, she let herself believe that healing wasn't the same as surrender. It was choosing herself again. Piece by piece, slowly, softly, but surely. And Kale stayed with her the whole time, not to fix her, but to hold space while she found her own way back.